Stupid was my favorite line. Okay, so we are at our last, but by no means least, talk of today. And for it, we have Niamh O Brien, a senior manager at our host, Salesforce, where she leads teams focused on customer success, operational transformation, and AI enablement across EMEA. She is the AI lead for Salesforce Ireland's Women's Network and has built a reputation for combining deep operational expertise with a human-centered approach to AI adoption. Her work focuses on a critical but often overlooked area: how human behavior, language, and bias shape AI outputs, and what leaders can do to ensure AI is used thoughtfully, ethically, and with accountability. And she's going to share some of that insight with us. So welcome, Niamh O Brien.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm sure it's been a lovely and long day today across this event. I've heard great things. I've seen the LinkedIn posts as I was in a different session hosting school children just about to graduate down on the lower floor, so I've been trying to keep tabs on both events. Thank you again for having me. Yes, I do run our EMEA Success Org. I moved from reactive, so fixing an engine, to proactive, providing enablement. Briefly, my background now is human-centered artificial intelligence. That's what my master's leads into, so it was great listening to my predecessor there on her PhD on the black box approach. And I did, my first module was on ethics and how do we actually bring that in, and I'm going to talk you through the other side of bias in AI, which is the bias that we hold in ourselves and how that comes through and how we interact with these systems, because we are the driving force of what the AI generates, and we need to keep that in mind as we are using these tools, especially if we're going to use them to help us strategically make decisions that affect our day-to-day or the outcomes of other people's day-to-day. So, as I said, AI doesn't just create bias. We understand that the training data has been built with bias. It used legacy data that can skew to gender, to race, what regency built it, what demograph was included. That can add to the bias. But beyond that, it does reflect it. So if we go in and use a tool and we use blunt or vague or we leave stuff out, that affects the outcome. So when we go into a situation where we want an outcome, we need to ensure that we use it in a way that stands to our name. If you produce something using AI and you want it to stand true in a meeting, you do want it to be trustworthy because that's you on the line, right? Those words represent something that you want the message to be heard. So shaping decisions every day, we've moved beyond the theory of AI quite a long time ago. A lot of companies are using it across everything. So we already have AI that helps with productivity reviews at the end of year. We have it that it summarizes escalations, that it can give feedback for your peers, that you can instill the business need and it'll give you a strategy, right? So we know that. But the outcome comes down to what goes in, the initial prompt, the initial feedback. If it leans one way or another, the AI will follow that path. So if you have someone on your team, you know, that you don't have the best relationship with and you're blunt and vague in your feedback, the AI is going to be blunt and vague in its feedback. It's going to agree with you. However, that might not be the story of that person. They might be your highest achiever. They just don't want to be your best friend. So you want something that actually reflects someone's efforts, even if your opinion of them isn't right up there against their efforts. So AI amplifies human input, and the amplification chain is, as I was mentioning, the prompt. The prompt directs the intent. The model itself will process the pattern, regardless of which LLM you use. It will do its pattern matching path. The output will reflect the lens at which you gave it that information, and it will not go beyond that because it doesn't think. And decisions, it will create the impact. If you deliver that message and it doesn't land well, that message can't just be taken back. The impact has been had. So we do impact and amplify ourselves when we use AI day to day. So a very basic example of this is a simple prompt that a lot of us can use day to day in different situations is summarize this escalation. The AI will go in and it'll generate probably a short paragraph. Will be quite formal, quite blunt. This is what happened. This is when it happened. This is the potential for why it happened. it's not really usable, but the same person on the same model says, summarize this, focus on the customer impact and avoid any blame, you'll have an empathetic summary that drives resolution, and it's going to focus on leadership actions. So you're only adding in a few extra words, but you're telling the AI that I do need to understand how this affected them. Like, what is their industry? Are they healthcare providers and their system was down for 8 hours? That's a bigger impact for, are they a printing company and they couldn't print for half an hour, right? They're two different systems, but the impact is massive. So where bias can creep in, it's our prompt wording. A specific framing can force a correct answer from the AI, and it might not be correct at all. It's just giving you the best assumption for what it has at hand. The tone, using directive language instead of neutral instructions. And I do this. I drive efficiency across my org. So if something hasn't gone well, I will tell my bot to reframe this blunt, firmly, but without anything extra. And it'll give me a blunt kind of way of delivering that message of what went wrong, why, and what I don't want to happen again. But I can also say, put a spin on that and say, I want it to also be empathetic too. I understand that things can go wrong, right? And it will put that in as well. And it's very helpful in that case. The context, what we choose to include, and more importantly, what we choose to leave out when we're using prompts can be vital to the trustability of the output. Assumptions, baked in beliefs about what the right outcome is before asking. This comes into when you're training a model to find the right candidates. Like, we can put assumptions in of, right, well, I want to hire an SVP, and you put in all of these tendencies, but you might accidentally put in a lot of tendencies that are male-focused language. If you don't put in balancing verbiage, the system will just assume you want a male, so it will just get rid of all of the female candidacies unless they used those words, right? And then because you don't see what it's doing in the back end, you don't know it's doing that. So the assumptions can be a vital part of building trustworthy systems. The authority bias, we see this throughout enterprises and companies a lot more. It sounds really trustworthy, so we do trust it. I need you to give me an output of, what happened on this account on this day, and it does. But it might not be wrong. It might have picked the wrong account, or it might have missed a child account of that company. And its tone and its confidence in what it gives you, if you go, brilliant, I'm so busy, that's one thing off my list, and you present that and it's actually not factual and it gets cut out, that is where the authority bias can come in. You believe the system without putting yourself in it. The human in the loop is you are supposed to validate it. You are supposed to sit there and say, no, those numbers don't look right. I'm missing something. And you can go back to the bot and say, I think we're missing something. Can we do a verbose check or cite your sources? I do a lot of cite my sources these days just to make sure. An echo chamber, this might have come up today. It was the topic of my very first ever AI talk, which is, it likes to agree with you. These companies have invested literally billions into generating these large language models. And if it was very challenging and abrupt and rude, you wouldn't go back and use it again, right? You'd just go back and use in Google, or you'd say, no, that's not for me. So it does say, yeah, that's a great idea. Oh, I really like what you're thinking. That's the exact right step to take on this brainstorming session. It agrees with you so that you continue to digest and use it. The problem is, somebody constantly agreeing with you doesn't mean that it's the best idea. You want, and this is where the human comes in, when you share an idea with your colleagues, they say, I love that, but what about? They interject the challenge and the creativity, and it amplifies your idea to everything it can be. If AI just agrees with you and it keeps you in a box, you miss that opportunity for greatness and you sit with mediocre. So the echo chamber, and there's ways of doing this. One term that was mentioned in the question earlier on was play devil's advocate. I adore this when I'm doing something with any of my AI tooling, is I've built something, I think it's amazing because I've put a lot of time into it, but if I say challenge, it's going to critique it. If I say validate, it's going to say it's perfect, absolutely perfect. If I say play devil's advocate, it's going to do something incredibly interesting. It's going to go, you're doing this really well. Here's where your bottleneck is. This is not verbose. It doesn't add anything. I'm losing processing power focusing on this when reality is we should be focusing on this. I'm like, that's great. Fix it. And it'll go and fix it. And then you revise again. And again, I say, how are we doing now? Let's play devil's advocate. So I use AI to not replace a single person on my team or me, but I do use it to help me be me at my best when I'm using an idea. So prompting is influence. You are influencing a system to generate an outcome based on what you tell it. And influence is a key piece here, is responsibility. You're not just consuming the outputs, you are directing them. So we should try and remain present with what we're asking and what the outcome should be, and not just agreeing with the steps in between. Because we do have a responsibility to try and use these toolings as ethically as possible. So how do you get better? It's a progressive tool. You know, you start off with basic prompts, you build, you get better at it. But there is 5 things to keep in mind as you're prompting that will help you get there faster. Devil's advocate is a fun little tip, but the clarity, the context, the constraint, the perspective, and challenge is how you can build a better prompt system or better outputs from the prompts that you instill into these LLMs or these systems. So what exactly is it I'm asking for? Am I free of leading words? You don't want it to lead it towards what it thinks is going to make you happy. You want it to do the search that is accurate and reflective, the way a human would. What does the AI need to know to avoid default bias? I am looking for an inclusive position when I'm hiring, to avoid any ages and terminology, all of those things. What should AI specifically avoid in its logic? Do not use data beyond 2023, anything like that, right? Offer it a siloing approach so that it becomes much more verbose in that silo of data so the accuracy goes up if you have a term that you don't want to go beyond. So before you hit enter, am I guiding the outcome? Am I telling it something that is suggesting my unconscious biases? Am I introducing biases, or am I seeking validation or truth? I had an idea, what do you think? It's going to say it's great. I've had an idea, what do you think would be the impact of this and what am I missing? I'm in this industry. You know, it does get better at understanding you the more you iterate through. It can match your tone pretty quickly in 3 or 4 sentences. But is that what you want? Or is the outcome going to be more forward-facing, and to which audience is it for? Like I tell it, this is a C-suite level update. So they don't really care the outcome of what those numbers were. They care about the why and what's going to happen next. So that messaging needs to be switched for the person who's going to digest it. AI won't fix biases. The data's already been trained. We understand kind of the pitfalls, but people will influence the future biases of these outcomes. Better prompting leads to better thinking. The future of AI depends on our ability to direct it with integrity. I think that speaks for itself, so I'm not going to dwell too much on that side, as I know I'm coming up by time. And then there's just my sources. So actually, we were up right on time. Perfect. Any questions? Oh, you do have a question? No questions? Oh no, I think there was a question. Yeah?
Like I have a recent experience of where AI was efficient enough to help me get through the next stage when I entered to like an assessment, and then during the assessment, I'm someone who would normally go out of the box because of like culture, and then because I'm assuming AI would be a better predictor of like algorithms. So I asked, do I respond to this question with like my own PPT or something, or do I just respond like a direct email? And then it says respond directly because people are like the HR is probably going through a lot of other people's responses, and so I do that, but I get a rejection. So I'm like, at what point do we trust our gut, or when do we know when AI's should I say the decision is ours to make or AI's decision to make?
I love that question. That's amazing. And let me tell you something. I read CVs a lot, and I read input, and I have feedback from my peers. I can tell when something has been written with AI, and I can tell when there's a human behind it. So you should use it to be you at your best. Write that email. Ensure that your points are there, and refine it with AI. Don't allow it to take everything that is you away from you, because somebody hiring you wants you. If they wanted a bot, they'd pay for an agent, they'd come to Salesforce, right? But if they hire you, it's because the essence of you fits in with their team, so why lose that? AI is supposed to be a partner in our day-to-day. If we allow it to replace us by vomiting out AI slop, why would I hire you, right? So the next time, think about what was the key messaging that you would have delivered and see what way you could have tweaked it. And then see if that lands and it still feels like you. If it doesn't feel like you, tweak it again. Okay? That was a great question. I think we're out of time, so. Oh, one more?
protecting the public. So I'm a dietitian, and I know I've used ChatGPT to ask questions to see what it comes back with, and like lots of people are out there, asking questions around diet without context. Also, I think in terms of what you're saying, people put in what they want to hear, which potentially could be dangerous for them. So we all understand this.
Yeah.
What about people who don't? And how do we protect people?
I've taught this as well, and it's a wonderful question again. AI can be siloed to give you a better answer. So you could say as a dietitian, I want you to challenge me as my worst critic as a top dietitian. Here's where I'm leaning. What have I missed in the world that could take me further, right? You can assign roles when you're engaging with AI. I'm going in for an interview, or I want you to act as an interview. They've told me they use a STAR method. Challenge me against this job description, and it will be very good. So you could say to your patients, if you want ChatGPT to digest your information, ask it to act as a dietitian, give it core information that it needs. Are you in a target age bracket? Do you know about pre-existing medical conditions? What does good look like for you, right? Because not everybody wants to sit in that ideal BMI range. Some people are quite happy being a little bit plump. That's okay. But if they tell the GPT that, or any of the models, it will align with what you want, and it will say, okay, perfect. If we're not aiming for the definition of excellence and we're aiming for better, here's some suggestions. Maybe it's go on Galfer, or I think you really should get a blood check once a year, every year. Peace of mind, all of those things. So it can partner with you, and you could teach that to your patient. Say, if you want to do this with this, I recommend start with act as a dietitian, and 3 or 4 lines of what information you think it should always have about a patient, so that at least you don't come in and they go, well, I've gone to WebMD and I think I'm dying, where they can take a step further and say, oh, I actually think I'd love to understand a little bit more about the Ozempic or Mounjaro or anything like that, right? Does that help?
Yeah, so I'm just a bit concerned, in terms of, guys went to college for 4 or 6 years, did masters. I went to college for 4 years. So then to tell someone to act as a dietitian is kind of trying to parse all of that into it, and there's many more layers, and obviously there's a lot of bias in terms of diet.
Yeah.
In terms of.
So true.
Yeah. So I suppose I can think there's an awful lot more that we don't expect.
So true. Yeah.
From actually acting as a dietitian or acting as a data scientist or whatever,
I could finish the conversation with you directly afterwards if you'd like. Yeah.
I was going to connect the two of you anyway. This is the ladies' talk I was talking about this morning. So I do a lot of work with the healthcare and with the NHS and HSE, and I would say it is responsibility of the governing bodies to actually make sure that the service isn't undermined. There's nothing to stop people from going to Google now. My father-in-law is on it all the time, self-diagnosing, and sweet Jesus, I think the GP has asked him to stop coming, right? So you can't really take away from that as an element. It will always be there, but how people are educated and influenced is up to the governing bodies, and I think that we have to reverse challenge them back to make sure that they are doing it responsibly, because they have a responsibility to it.
I'm standing here, but I think I'm done. Thank you.